Good morning.
Morning.
So we had thank you to Kathy this morning for our jokes. I didn't supply a joke this morning. But the joke is actually just going to be for the in-house people today. Those are great jokes, by the way. I love those jokes. But if you want to come and hear the jokes, you have to come to hear the jokes today. So, but I'm going to tell you a little bitty story real quick about a man who was born in Kentucky. He spent the first 7 years of his life in a one-room cabin. We know the type of cabin. There's a fireplace, there's a bed, there's a cook stove, or sorry, not even a cook stove, it was a one-room cabin. It had a pot to go in the fireplace, maybe a bed or some mats on the floor, rocking chair for mama, and that was about it. At 21, he worked as a rail splitter, a flatboatman, a storekeeper, a postmaster, and a surveyor in Illinois. He could have despised his small beginnings, but he didn't. He pushed past them, and he saw he didn't have a formal education. He grew up in a one-room cabin and had no formal education. He could have given up, but he turned to the study of law. If he hadn't given up, if he hadn't persisted and pushed past his small beginnings, he would have never gone and studied law. He would have never run for Senate and then president, and would not have been the Abraham Lincoln that this country needed. Did you know Shakespeare, the great writer, the great author, the great playwright, started out holding horses at the door to a theater in London? That was his job. He held the horses. In 1869, H.J. Heinz started with selling tomatoes, and with a small a jar and two women and a boy bottling tomatoes. Kraft was a grocery clerk who started with $65 to peddle cheese from a one-horse wagon. Small beginnings. Last week, Brian Richardson came and spoke to us about not resenting our small beginnings. That was one of the points in his sermon. Don't resent small beginnings. Nobody starts out as president. Some people are born as king or born to be kings, but nobody starts out as a president. Steve Jobs, we all know who Steve Jobs is. He did not start out as a billionaire. He started as a college student in his garage. Garages are great places. Some of my favorite bands started out in garages. And now they persisted, they endured, and they sing and perform to studios or to stadiums with thousands of people. Don't resent small beginnings. Abraham is one man. One man. He obeyed God, he listened to God, he believed in what God promised him, and became the father of many nations. His children already are like the stars in the sky. And they just keep his line just keeps multiplying. Because we are children of Abraham through Christ, his numbers just keep multiplying exponentially. Don't resent small beginnings. Matthew 13:31 through 32. He gave them another parable. This is Jesus talking. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field. And of all the seeds planted in the garden in the region, it is the smallest. But when it has grown, it is the largest of the garden herbs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air find shelter in its branches. Usually, I have today I like visual aids. I have a little container here of mustard seeds, and they are actually rather tiny. And I planted mustard in my garden this year. Now, there's a couple different types of mustard, but they both come from a very, very, and you cannot see this on camera, but it is a very, very, very tiny seed. It's about the size of pencil lead. And this seed in my garden this year grew to about here, was the top of the plants. A mustard tree grows to 16 feet from a tiny, tiny little seed. Don't resent small beginnings. Speaking of seeds, do you ever we've all eaten eggs, chicken eggs. The unfertilized egg, not the egg that actually pops out, but the unfertilized egg is very small. And we've all eaten fish eggs. You can see how small they are. Well, most of us like seafood and have eaten sushi and fish eggs. And they're very small. The human unfertilized egg is very small. Did you know that a bird's egg, which becomes a chicken egg, and a human's egg, which becomes a baby, the unfertilized eggs are actually very, 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 very close in size, like microns in difference in size. But they become something very big. You know what else is right in the same size zone? A whale's egg, unfertilized egg. It's the same size, almost the exact same size as an unfertilized human egg, and a whale can't fit in this building. Don't resent small beginnings. Zechariah 4:10. I'm going to read this from the New Century Version. The people should not think that small beginnings are unimportant. They will be happy when they see Zerubbabel with tools building the temple. This verse comes from a time when the children of Israel had been exiled. They were kidnapped and taken to taken to Persia and other places. They were scattered from Israel at this time, and some of them were stayed in Israel. Some of them stayed in Jerusalem, but many of them were scattered. There was another exodus, another out of Israel. And the temple had been destroyed. And they had a hope for a new temple. But they were afraid. And they were afraid of rebuilding the temple. But they also saw how much work was going to go into it. Yet Zerubbabel caught the vision. And he didn't let it go. And he persisted and he started. This man was not a professional temple builder. He was a servant. He was a faithful servant. One of the ministers that we like to follow, his name is David Crank. His father, Mr. Crank, Pastor Crank, started out with a small ministry. He actually was not a very wealthy man. He had a small family. They had basically like a trailer house. Like you pull along behind a car. They were not wealthy people, and they started out a ministry, barely enough money to feed the family, but they also planted seed. They didn't plant a lot of seed because they didn't have a lot, but they were faithful in it. It was $1 a day. There was a ministry that they supported. We also, as a church, support. And he said, "We're going to give this. It's going to be a struggle, but we're going to give $1 a day." So the kids would go out and they would pick up cans if they had to. They would do odd jobs. They would toss papers. He would do stuff, odd jobs. But he made it $1 a day into a ministry. The ministry didn't resent it. The ministry that they sowed into. Every day they would go through and get the mail and it would say divided up into the different departments, and they would say, "Who got the Crank letter today?" And somebody would hold it up and I'd go, "I got the Crank letter." They knew it had $1 in it. But every day they were excited to see that $1 come in because of the faithfulness, and they knew what God was going to do in their lives. Mr. Crank went on to build a church, and it grew and it grew. And when he died, his son picked up. And he was faithful. And his son didn't have any formal education or formal training to be a pastor. Now David and Nicole lead 2 huge churches. One of them is the largest church in their state. They started from small beginnings and faithfulness. This church started out small. It started out with a small group of people who wanted a place to worship God. They wanted to start something new. They wanted something that was in their geographic area that they could meet and just be passionate about God. This church has gone through 7 different locations before it settled here. Temporary houses before it came to this place. It took years to build this building to the point where it is now. There were times where we started out, and it was a lot of it was done with 3 or 4 men and what little money they could get together to rent the equipment to come in here and clear the land, the equipment to come in here and start digging the foundation. But when we first started, Kathy remembers here on the building, we were meeting on a concrete slab. And we watched the building come up around us. Slowly, brick by brick, the foundation was laid, the walls in the basement were laid. And then we got a ceiling over us, which was this floor that I'm standing on. It took years to build it. It was faithful. And we started with small, but look at what we've got already. Christianity started with men who started small. Abraham, he was from a good family, but he was one man who obeyed God and traveled across what he knew was the world and followed God. Moses, he had good beginnings, but then he went away and he followed God. God led him to become the man who wrote the law and most of the Old Testament. Jesus was from Nazareth. What good can come of Nazareth, they would say. Jesus. He didn't start out. I mean, he was the Son of God. He is God. He came to earth as God made flesh, but he laid aside his godhood and lived and grew as a man. He started his ministry as one man and went around and ministered and gathered his 12 disciples. That's a small beginning. 12 men. That's a small, and obviously their wives or whatever would hang out too, but that's a small beginning. But Christianity to now is global. Don't resent small beginnings. Jesus said, "Whosoever shall give to drink one of these little ones a cup of cold water, only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward." Now that version's awful, but what it's saying is, even the one that gives a cup of water to a prophet, to a minister, to somebody, will have a reward for that action. The disciples started as helpers to Jesus. We are called to be helpers to God. Little actions, giving a cup of water, little actions, they add up. You may think, oh, well, what I do doesn't matter. No, it does. 3 churches in Virginia decided that little actions matter. So they went out and they educated people and they signed people up to vote. 3 churches decided they were going to do this. Those 3 churches registered 70,000 people to vote. 3 churches. In the last election, Governor Glenn Youngkin won by 10,000 votes. Those 70,000 voters voted for Glenn Youngkin. We changed the history of Virginia. Those 3 churches and their obedience, every little person that went out and said, I'm going to obey God and go forth and do this, made a difference. Every person makes a difference. You make a difference. Every action makes a difference. When you obey God, it makes a difference. In 1758, Benjamin Franklin wrote, "For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost, being overtaken and slain by the enemy. All for want of care for the horseshoe nail." Every action, when we obey God and we do what we're called to do, it makes a difference. Inviting someone to church, texting someone, calling someone, sending them a letter, it makes a difference. Holding the door open for somebody and saying, have a good day, makes a difference. Whatever it is, if you think, oh, I'm just no, it makes a difference. Every action in here as a church, going forth and witnessing to somebody, stopping, big actions, stopping and picking up somebody out of obedience, big action, a little bit of step, a little bit of boldness makes a difference. I've told the story of Shirley King. My aunt Billy invited her to church. One woman, come to church with me. She did. She got saved. A year later, her husband got saved. And together they have led so many people to Christ. The people they have led so many people to Christ. I would not exist if she had not invited Shirley to church. I wouldn't exist. This church would not be where it is because my dad was one of the people that came out of that invitation. His salvation. We are here to exist, but his salvation was one of the ones that came out of that decision to follow God and invite somebody. Small actions, small decisions. So don't resent where you're at today. Don't resent your ministry. Oh, I'm not David Craig. I'm not Joyce Meyer. No, it doesn't. You don't have to be. You are you. You are who God called you to be, and He has a ministry for you. Don't resent it, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be ginormous. God may not call you to stand up here or sit up here at the piano and play or sing or be big and whoo. God's got something for you, and it can be amazing if you don't resent it, if you follow and obey. Last time before last, that's what I preached on. Listen, believe, obey. Listen to God. Just listen to Him. Just open your ears and truly receive. Believe that He has goodwill for you. Believe that He wants good things for you and that His plan for you is way more amazing than your plan, than your ideas. I was telling someone, if your dream, if you can see, this is my plan for my life, this is my plan for what I'm going to do, this is my plan, and you can achieve it under your own power, not God's plan is going to be way bigger than that. If you think that's God's plan, because God's plan is going to take faith. Because God's plan, you can't do it on your own as a human. You're not big enough. You're not strong enough. If your plan scares you, it might actually be big enough. If what you think God wants you to do scares you, and you go, I can't do that under my own power, I can't do that under my own strength, guess what? That's right, because we need Him. So don't resent where you're at today. Anybody ever trained bodybuilding? Anybody ever lifted weights? Yeah. You didn't become Arnold Schwarzenegger overnight? No. Started out as a skinny little boy. But became a weightlifter. Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't born Mr. Universe. He was born little Arnold. It took persistence. Don't resent where we come from. Those small things. Faithfulness in the small things adds up. Those small actions. There's a man who, when he joined his new family, he wanted to help out in their ministry. He didn't know what to do. He had some training, and so they said, we need somebody in this department. He said, okay, I'll do it. Tell me what to do, I'll do it. And he did. And he proved himself in that small department, in those small errands. And they said, we need somebody over here. Let's get George to do it. And they said, George, will you do it? Sure. You tell me what to do, I'll do it. And he did it. He was faithful. And every increment he kept doing, he kept saying, hey, well, you know what? George is really good at this. I think this is what God wants him to do. Let's move him over. And he kept moving into a higher and higher office. And now he leads a church that is known as the revival capital of the world. He started out not even in the mailroom. Or maybe he did start out in the mailroom, but he started out small and he was faithful. And as we are faithful, God will increase us. Luke 16:10, whoever is faithful in the little will be faithful in much. Don't resent our small beginnings because those little beginnings are it's the seed. A seed starts out small and it keeps growing. A seed doesn't resent when it becomes a little seedling and spurts out of the ground. That's the start. That's the beginning. Every step is important. Every step that we take is important. So right now, as a church, we're not the biggest. We're not the baddest. We don't have 50 different children's programs. We don't have 5 different men's programs, 10 different women's. We don't have all that stuff. We don't have a 20-piece worship band up here every morning. And I'm not going to resent where we're at. I'm going to thank God for the faithfulness of those who are here. I'm going to praise God for the resources and everything that He has given us, because He has given us so much. The mustard seed doesn't resent the meat inside of it that it feeds off of as it goes in the ground before it sprouts. I'm not going to resent what God has given us. I'm not going to resent where we are at. So let's give Him the praise. Let's give Him the glory for where we're at. Let's give Him. It's amazing what an attitude of gratitude will do for you, and how God responds to that when we start and we look and we're thankful for where we're at. I'm about 5'10". When I was 4, I didn't resent my height. I knew what I wanted, and that was my goal. I didn't quite reach my goal. I'm not 6'4", but I knew what my goal was, but I didn't resent my height. I didn't resent the width of my shoulders, the size of my feet. My mom probably did when my feet got bigger than hers and she had to keep buying me more shoes, but I didn't resent those stages. Each stage is something special. Each stage is what there's a country song. I don't listen to country, but it says you're gonna miss this. At every stage of a parent and their child, you're gonna miss this. So enjoy that stage. Right now, we are in a wonderful little stage. We can become a fellowship. We are a fellowship. Enjoy the stage you're at, but look forward. Don't lose sight of the goal. We have a goal. We have a vision in this church. We know where we're going. We have to know where we're starting. We started before. We're starting again. We're not going to resent this stage. We're just going to keep pressing on. We're going to be faithful. In our education, this is our kindergarten, maybe. Maybe this is freshman year at college. I don't know. I'm not God. I don't see the big picture. But we're still growing. This is an awesome place. So let's keep going. Let's keep growing and not lose our faithfulness. Because that's the fuel to the fire, is our faithfulness, our endurance, our humor, our love for each other. If you're watching, you know where God's called you to be. You know what God has called you to do. Don't resent where you're at. Say, this is where I'm starting. That's where I'm going to be. And I'm going to keep growing. Everybody can grow. Everybody is a seed. Everybody can grow. The only time you stop growing is when you're dead. So keep growing. Don't die. Don't stagnate. Keep going. Keep pushing. Keep persisting. Keep learning. You're never, never, never too old to stop learning. Never. I've heard stories of universities, and they'll celebrate at the graduation when somebody has returned to school at an incredible age, 60, 70, 80 years old, and went back to college. And everybody goes, yeah, well, they're probably not going to use that degree, but yeah. Nah, they're going to use it. And they're going to use that knowledge. That's why they went back to school, because they had a goal. They wanted something. They didn't stop learning. They may have stagnated for a bit, but they went back. You may have stagnated in your walk with God a little bit, but get back on it. He's there. He's faithful. Don't resent where you're at, but keep going. The temple wouldn't have been built if Zerubbabel had stopped with the first stone. It wouldn't have been built if he stopped with one wall. The temple is going to be rebuilt again. It's been rebuilt a couple of different times. They have what they need. They're not going to stop. They're ready. We need to be ready as a church. We need to be ready to grow. We need to be ready to bloom, to become a 16-foot tree, standing on a mountain. Everyone looks at. That's what I want us to be. I want us to be a light on a hill. I want us to be the one that people look at and go, yeah, I want to be like that. Not just because of our size, but because of our heart, because of our faithfulness, because of our walk with God. Because that's what really matters. Are we doing what God wants us to do? Are we listening? Are we believing? Are we obeying? It starts with the basics. That's what we've been going over. We've been going all over the basics. The basics are important to have that foundation. This building wouldn't stand if it weren't for that concrete pad. If it weren't for these cement walls, this building wouldn't stand. I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for the floorboards underneath me. Every part matters. You matter. Every nail and every hoof of a great battle matters. Everyone matters. You matter. So believe in yourself. Believe in the vision that God has for us as a body and you as a person. Don't resent the small beginning. Seek the goal. Look at the goal. And know that you can achieve it. So, I love you guys. I truly, truly do. And I want to see good things for you. So let's do it together. If you need help, if you need advice, if you need books or videos or whatever, you just need an encouraging word every once in a while, let us know. We'll send it back to you. With small actions add up. We love you. We'll see you next time. God bless. Anybody want a message?